Hello and welcome to WION Live broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett. Let's take a look at the top stories this hour. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson suffers a crushing defeat in a by-election in a constituency never previously lost by his Conservative Party, raising further questions about his leadership. "24 people are feared dead following a blaze at a building in a commercial district of the Japanese city of Osaka. The cause of the fire is still being investigated. The US hits China with new trade curbs and sanctions, banning virtually all imports from China's northwestern Xinjiang region over concerns of widespread forced labour. To mark the 10th anniversary of former leader Kim Jong-il's death, North Korea forces citizens to observe an 11-day period of mourning. Laughing, drinking and shopping has been banned for the next 11 days. English top-flight football is rocked by a surge of COVID-19 cases, but the Premier League is resisting calls for a temporary pause. 5 weekend matches have already been postponed, taking the total number of postponed games to 9 over the last 7 days. The Conservative Party of UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has lost the by-election for North Shropshire. It's a historically safe seat for the Tories that they've held for nearly 200 years. It's being seen as the latest sign of a backlash against Prime Minister Boris Johnson, whose government has been embroiled in a series of crises and scandals this past month. The Liberal Democrat candidate Helen Morgan won the seat with over 17,000 votes. In her victory speech, Morgan alluded to the most recent controversy the Prime Minister has found himself in.
Independent.
Tonight, the people of North Shropshire have spoken on behalf of the British people. They've said loudly and clearly, Boris Johnson, the party is over.
And we'll get to the parties in a moment. The by-election itself was called after former Environment Secretary Owen Paterson had to resign after he was found to have breached parliamentary rules on lobbying. That set off a scandal about other Conservative MPs and their second jobs. The results cap off a pretty difficult week for Prime Minister Boris Johnson. It comes just days after he experienced his biggest parliamentary rebellion in office. 100 Tory members of Parliament voted against the government's proposals to update COVID restrictions in England. He also remains embroiled in an ongoing controversy about parties held in and around Downing Street in December last year, and at other times too, it's now emerged, when social gatherings and parties were banned in London. It comes as crisis looms again over COVID-19 as well. On Thursday, the UK set another record, reporting over 88,000 new COVID cases. That is a 31.4% rise from last week. The number of confirmed Omicron cases also rose to over 11,000, up from 1,691 on Wednesday. In London, 73.5% of all COVID cases are thought now to be the Omicron variant. Though the UK government has stopped short of formally limiting socialising, many citizens appear to be heeding its advice to practice caution ahead of the Christmas period. Well, let's get more on the political fallout from North Shropshire from WION's UK correspondent Chris Jones, who's joining me now. And Chris, how big a blow is this by-election defeat for Boris Johnson?
Well, you said there it's been a difficult week for Boris Johnson, and this certainly hasn't helped his or the Conservatives' cause. It's been called a kind of humiliating loss for the Conservative Party, who have held their seat in North Shropshire for around 200 years. That's a really long time for a party to hold one isolated seat in one area. And remember, the seat came about after Owen Paterson was caught up in that sleaze scandal. The Liberal Democrats now take over that seat in Parliament, which has now kind of broken for Christmas. But the whole pressure on Boris Johnson is surrounding a couple of things, really. The sleaze scandal, which we've mentioned, and also this Christmas party debacle that happened last year, which, of course, the Conservative Party are denying happened. But as well as that, there's the spread of the Omicron COVID-19 variant, and Plan B restrictions have been brought in this week. Around 100 Conservative MPs voted against those measures even coming into place. So there really is pressure, not just from the public and distrust from the public, but also pressure from within the Conservative Party on Boris Johnson as well. And some bookmakers are saying that Boris Johnson's really on his kind of last chance saloon right now.
Well, let's talk about that and some of those Conservative MPs considering when or whether to launch a leadership challenge against him. If they did decide to go ahead and do that, how would it play out?
Well, for that to happen, we'd need a vote of no confidence. And for that to happen, we'd need to see Conservative MPs really showing some kind of distrust in Boris Johnson. They'd need to submit a letter to the 1922 Committee of Tory backbenchers. 54 is the number of letters that would be needed to put in place a vote of no confidence, and then the Conservative Party would look for a new leader of the government. Those letters, it's worth mentioning, would be confidential, so no one would know who submitted those letters. And of course, as we've mentioned, there are rumbles from within the Conservative Party about whether some letters have already been submitted. You know, we've had those the sleaze scandal last month. We've also seen the Christmas party issues, which again the Conservative Party denies, but also the Omicron variants. The spread of that could also cause huge issues for Boris Johnson in the coming weeks and months. But with this North Shropshire by-election loss, there's certainly a kind of distrust from the public towards Boris Johnson and from within his Parliament, within his Conservative Party, who have put some of the blame of that loss on Boris Johnson. So, as I mentioned, Boris Johnson really could be on his last legs in Parliament and in the Prime Ministerial role right now.
OK, Chris, thank you. Also worth saying that if there is a leadership vote for Boris Johnson, he could go ahead and win it. But we will keep an eye on that for you here at WION. 24 people are feared dead after a fire broke out in a commercial building in the Japanese city of Osaka. Dozens of firefighters were deployed, and Osaka police say officers are investigating the cause of the fire. Authorities say there is a possibility it was an arson attack. The commercial building houses a mental health clinic. The blaze was detected on the 4th floor, after which 70 fire engines were deployed to the scene. The incident occurred in Osaka's Kita-Shinshi district, where a number of high-end bars and nightclubs are located. Osaka is a major economic hub. It's Japan's second biggest metropolis after Tokyo. Next to North Korea, which has been marking 10 years since the death of leader Kim Jong-il. North Koreans gathered to honour their so-called dear leader, who ruled the country for 17 years. Every year since Kim Jong-il's death, North Koreans have observed mourning for 10 days. This time around, people are being ordered not to laugh, sing or drink during this time.
Mourning is a thing very personal to people. It is something that cannot be forced upon. It's a human emotion that cannot be regulated. Yet, on the 10th death anniversary of former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, North Korea's supreme leader Kim Jong-un has ordered a strict 11-day mourning period. Citizens have been banned from showing any sign of happiness during this time. They can neither laugh nor drink alcohol. And on the exact day of his death anniversary, which is on the 17th of December, North Koreans will even be banned from going grocery shopping. And if someone dies during this 11-day mourning period, North Koreans cannot cry out loud. While mourning the national leaders, their own right to grieve has been taken away. Kim Jong-il was the father of the current supreme leader Kim Jong-un and ruled the kingdom from 1994 until his death in 2011. His rule coincided with one of the darkest periods in North Korean history. It is estimated that as many as 3.5 million people died during a 4-year period of famine in the mid-1990s. The police has been told in advance to be on the lookout for people who fail to appear as appropriately bereaved. Meanwhile, tribute to late North Korean leader have started pouring in from across the nation. Just a day before his 10th death anniversary, people across Pyongyang stopped to bow towards the nearest statue or portrait of the former leader on Friday. North Korea halted all business for around 5 minutes as a mark of respect. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
WION, now available on Spotify and Google Podcast. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying on with us here on WION World is One. After striking a deal with the IAEA on replacing cameras at a nuclear site, Iran has refused to share images from the sabotage workshop. The deal was seen as a breakthrough in the ongoing nuclear talks in Vienna. But Iran is insistent that the examination of these cameras will not be allowed until after sanctions are lifted. The US sanctions remain among the sticking points in Vienna. Iran has demanded the complete removal of the sanctions by Washington, as well as safeguarding guarantees against future changes. Tehran and the UN atomic watchdog have reached an agreement on replacing the cameras at the facility which makes the centrifuges. The decision will see the cameras put back at Karaj, which came under attack in June. Since that attack, Iran refused access to the International Atomic Energy Agency to replace cameras damaged in the incident. Earlier this year, Iran also started restricting some IAEA inspection activity. The agreement to replace cameras came after Western powers warned that time is running out to revive the 2015 deal. Reports said Iran would keep all recordings from the cameras. The spokesman for the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran has said that the agency will not have any access to the information before sanctions are lifted. Since the nuclear deal's collapse, Tehran has started enriching uranium up to 60% purity. It is a short technical step from the weapons-grade levels of 90%. The 2015 deal limited enrichment to 3.67%, enough to be used in a power plant. Earlier this week, the IAEA Director General had warned that limited access to Karaj hurt international efforts to monitor Iran's program. Grossi was also concerned about excessively invasive physical searches by security officials at nuclear facilities in Iran. The indirect talks between Iran and the United States are in their 7th round. Anxiety, meanwhile, is growing among the European countries at the negotiating table, as Iran has taken an extreme position in the negotiations. The remaining parties to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal plan to meet today to adjourn the talks on salvaging the agreement. One of the diplomats said that they were due to resume on the 27th of December, while another gave a time frame between Christmas and the New Year.
Salad? In the summertime? No, they have not salad. No vegetables? Yeah, it's the little hotel, not grown.
Israel has blocked a major deal with the UAE. The deal was to transport oil from the Gulf to Europe via an Israeli port city which houses a fragile coral reef. The announcement could lead to the cancellation of the deal. Israel and the UAE had normalized ties last year. This deal was one of the biggest consequences of their improving relations. According to the deal, oil unloaded from tankers in the Red Sea port of Eilat can be moved across Israel in an existing pipeline to the Mediterranean coast. Environmentalists had filed a petition in the Israeli Supreme Court to block the agreement. The Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's government had said that it would not intervene. The government would instead allow the Environmental Protection Ministry to play its role in limiting activities that pose ecological risks.
We have made a significant environmental achievement in protecting the marine environment. We actually stopped the entry of dozens of oil tankers into the Gulf of Iliad, thus protecting the bay and the coral reef, which is so unique and has a global uniqueness. The Ministry of Environmental Protection instituted a zero-risk policy, and it received today a significant backing, which in fact outweighs any other consideration. Despite the pressures, despite the opposition, the state of Israel and the Gulf of Iliad will not become a bridge to polluting oil in an era of climate crisis. We will protect the sea, the beaches, the environment and mankind.
It has been a year since Myanmar's military junta forced itself into power, almost a year now. In a coup, the military overthrew the democratically elected government. Through the year, people in Myanmar have protested against the forced rulers. Many were arrested, many even lost their lives. And now a group of people in the deep forest of the country are learning how to fire shots. They have made a makeshift shooting range in a bid to prepare a battle and win back their freedom. Our next report tells you more.
Gunshots ring out at this makeshift shooting range deep in the forests of Myanmar. These civilians are learning how to fire live weapons as they prepare to battle a sizable, trained fighting force, Myanmar's own military. The junta staged a coup in February this year, ousting the civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi from power. Hundreds of resistance groups have since popped up across the country. Reuters managed to get rare footage of these young men and women, some former protesters who traded in their urban attire for jungle camouflage. And their numbers look to be growing, according to one former student activist turned fighter.
There are over 100 youths here. More people are coming to us. In the village near our camp, there are also many youths staying there because they are insecure about living in urban areas, or they want to join the army training camp, or for any other reason. They fled to the jungle and shelter in nearby villages.
Seclusion, however, has come with its challenges. Mud pots, waterways, and days of trekking have made access to food a problem. But the rebels still persist.
Everyone came here with their resentment and revolutionary spirit, so that is why they can only focus on fighting for revolution.
That fight may continue to weigh heavily on the resistance, as close to 1,300 civilians have been killed and more than 10,000 arrested since the coup.
Anti-apartheid legend Nelson Mandela liked hearty, simple meals like oxtail stew. It was a favorite of South Africa's first black president, and now it fills ravioli served in his former residence. Mandela's home has been transformed into a boutique hotel. The Mandela Foundation that owns the building says it is to make the great man's legacy self-sustainable. Take a look at this report.
This new boutique hotel nestled in a wealthy Johannesburg suburb once was the home of Nelson Mandela. The global peace icon lived here for 8 years, shortly after his release from prison. Here, he could enjoy the simple pleasures he was denied for 27 years. After it was abandoned to squatters, the house was remodeled into a boutique hotel. Inside, everything has been redone. The anti-apartheid hero's bedroom is now the presidential suite.
We want to show you sides of Madiba that you didn't see previously, and also teach you some things that you might not have known before. It's also an outlet for the Nelson Mandela Foundation, where they have these beautiful art pieces in the archives, and this is an opportunity to display all those art pieces.
Even though it is a renovated commercial building, the management aimed to keep the feel of a cosy home. Food plays an important role. The menu is inspired by Mandela's favourite dishes, and the chef, the cook who fed him for 20 years.
He liked samp and beans, goes with oxtail stew. That's what he liked the most, but he enjoyed everything that you put on the table for him.
The main goal is for guests to enjoy their stay in peace and quiet as much as they would in any other hotel. And if they want to know about Mandela, the staff are happy to oblige. The hotel is a way to fund Mandela's legacy, the manager Dimitri Moritz explains.
This is going to be around for many years to come, for many more people to see it, because this place will actually sustain itself and take care of itself.
But some of Mandela's admirers are not on board with the idea. For them, the luxury is a far cry from the ideals of equality and justice that he championed.
The origins of the famous Czech glass decorations can be traced back to a 19th century love affair. The practice of making decoratives from blown glass beads have been a hit since then. The special glass bead on Christmas ornaments, specially sought after, and now earned a place in the UNESCO Intangible Heritage List. We're leaving you with this report as we say goodbye. Thanks for watching.
A region where the art of glassmaking was thriving in the 19th century. It was a tradition that would one day go on to become a very important piece of the Czech Republic's cultural heritage, the basics of glassmaking.
The tradition of blown glass beads in Ponikla dates back to the middle of the 19th century. The craft was imported from the nearby Jablonec region, which is the cradle of costume jewellery in the country.
These special glass beads have been a hit since the 19th century. Mr. Hana's neighbours quickly picked up the craft, giving a much-needed boost to the economy of Ponikla. In the year 1902, the Routers factory for this craft opened its doors, and that is where they began making Christmas ornaments, which are highly sought after to this day. In 1948, the glass factory was nationalized by the communist regime. Most of the glass-blowing operations were limited to this region. Years later, the traditional practice has now found a place in the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage. It has been listed as a specialized and technically demanding craft, hailing the factory for safeguarding the tradition as a sole survivor.
Blown glass beads have always been a Cinderella of the glass industry, but the UNESCO listing has put the decorations in the spotlight. When you cast light on a star, it simply shines.
Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Many other. This is right, Arab.